It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's definitely not as hard as you think it is. It's not that hard. It's genuinely not that hard. You know why you think that thing that you really want is hard or impossible to achieve, and you'll never get there, you'll never have the thing. Oh, it's so hard, it's going to take so much sacrifice, this, and this. This is the narrative you're feeding yourself, right? Part of what justifies that narrative, because any story you tell, you can justify. That's why there are people on this earth right now that think the earth is flat. I mean, I don't have time in my day to worry about if the earth is flat or not, because it doesn't affect my day-to-day life. But ultimately, right, any story that you tell yourself that you decide is true, you will find ways to support it. That's why it's so great to be delusional, because if you're being really negative about your life, you're still being delusional. You're just being delusional in a negative way, because you actually can't definitively say that something is objectively just the worst all the time ever, because it's not. Like, there's no way for you to actually know that, so you may as well be delusional. But anyways, part of the reason why you think that thing is too hard for you to do, and I'm hoping by now what you really want and that you think this way towards has emerged in your head, is because, again, you are finding evidence to support the narrative that's already in your head. And very likely, a critical piece of the evidence that makes this feel true is that you are thinking about the end result of maybe like the leading person or result in that field. That's the result you're thinking of. So, for example, if you have aspirations to be the president of the United States, or you have aspirations to be a Nobel Peace Prize winner, or you have aspirations to be a New York Times bestselling author, or you have aspirations to be, what do people aspire to do? To be a medical doctor or a surgeon, whatever the heck it is, okay? It's not, you should never ask me to name out jobs, because I feel like every month I'm like, oh my God, I'm learning about all these things I didn't know existed. For whatever reason, when I was a kid, I thought there was like 5 jobs: doctor, lawyer, teacher, dancer, whatever it is. They should use more than like 5 words to teach kids about jobs when they're children. But anyways, in any of these possibilities, obviously some of them are like actually really high, like high ambition wise, are really lofty goals. That's a better way to say that. Some of these are genuinely really lofty goals, but someone who is a United States president was not born as a baby and came out the womb thinking like, I'm going to be a United States president. Because of course they would think that's really hard to do. Of course they would think that's really hard to do. It wasn't until, they were very close or well positioned to that possibility that they even started saying, okay, that's actually something that I want. And then once they decided it was something that they wanted, it was more within the realm of possibility for them to think about it. So you must think of things sequentially in the most appropriate order. And the reason you think something is too hard for you to do is because you are not thinking in the sequential, logical order of how things actually unfold. Like, read any, I feel like there's so many words for this, but read any memoir, autobiography, biography of public figures or just successful figures ever, okay? None of those memoirs open with, hey, it's chapter 1, I'm the person you think I am right now, right? Like if Beyonce wrote a memoir, it wouldn't open with, hey, I'm born and I'm Beyonce. Like I've always held the most Grammys in the world. Is that what they're called? Yeah. I've always held the most Grammys in the world. I'm an incredibly successful female artist. I'm world renowned. Like, no, that wouldn't be how you open chapter 1. Even Barack Obama, Michelle Obama's memoir, all of these things. I think hers is called Becoming. So that's actually a great example. None of those stories are going to start with the end. But something that we do all the time that makes us struggle to even get started at all is convince ourselves that something is hard and support that conviction. That's false. And I will keep emphasizing that it's false because you probably still don't believe me. You're like, oh, that's not the only thing I think about. There's other reasons why it's hard. I don't give a shit. You part of it, like I said, you believe what you think. So even if you don't believe it now, just keep telling yourself it's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's not that hard. Eventually you'll start to look for ways to get the thing that you want that are less difficult, because ultimately there's somebody else out there that has what you want, that got it in a way that required way less suffering and effort and grueling torture that you put yourself through every single day. So It's not that hard. That's true for somebody, so why can't it be true for you? That's the real question. Period. Clock it. Okay, so it's not that hard. But anyways, going back to now, I got to scroll back, girl, and see what the hell I was going to say, because I was low-key at bar. I distracted myself. Okay, I found it. So I was saying, right, part of what makes it so difficult for us to just try new things or try anything or push ourselves towards goals that we really genuinely care about and just continue on with the grueling experience of being mediocre or the grueling experience of living an unfulfilling, an underwhelming life, which I think could be an episode all by itself, right? Part of what justifies that, okay, it's hard, and we stick to that conviction and we support that conviction again, is that we look at the end result instead of looking at the beginning. And we overwhelm ourselves and then we convince ourselves that it's too hard. Of course it's too hard, right? Even with this podcast, right? This is probably going to be episode maybe 42 or something. Like we're in the 40s now. Ooh, and I love the number 4. So we're in a happy place. Anyways, if I, on the first day of making the podcast, or for years, right? I didn't even make this podcast for years because even though people encouraged me to do it, in my mind, I thought it was so hard because instead of just thinking of a podcast as literally what it is, which is the uploading of auditory thoughts, right? And of course, not everyone maybe could get away with approaching a podcast the way I currently do, which is off the cuff without editing, which then allows me to take a lot of stress off of. But again, I'm not everybody else, so I have to align to what's possible for me. But I didn't think about what was possible for me that could still be enjoyable for me and hopefully valuable to you, the listener, and like an audience. I didn't think about that possibility that involved a lot more ease because I convinced myself it was too hard because I only looked at the end result of other podcasts. And what was the end result of other podcasts? They had massive audiences. They did video editing. They had the full podcast studio set up. So not only do you have the mic set up and everything, you're in a literal professional recording studio, or at least a space that looks like one. There are professional cameras and lighting. Maybe sometimes the cameras are flipping from different angles. You're hosting people. You're asking them questions. So that means there's, on some level, you have to prepare the questions. Something like that would not be hard for me in terms of hosting people because, that I think is just facilitating an enjoyable conversation and stuff like that. But again, like, either you're planning it from having guests on the podcast, or I'm seeing people have very well thought out content of what's going into their podcasts. It doesn't seem like there's, blank spaces between them speaking. I have this mindset of, especially back then, people love a jump cut. And I used to hate YouTube because I felt this big pressure to like do all these jump cuts and make sure there wasn't blank space because, Gen Z doesn't know how to focus, blah, blah, blah. All of those narratives, right? So I was thinking of a podcast as the end result of a podcast, which, looking at what I could see and then knowing the little I knew about social media at the time, looked like my aunties tell me not to cut, but looked like a effing nightmare. Like it looked like an effing nightmare. I was like, oh my goodness, this does not look... This looks so stressful. Like if somebody wanted to make a podcast and let me be the talent on said podcast, sure, sign me right the hell up. I will show up on the day of recording. I will speak all day, all night, whatever you want. Please don't make me edit that thing, right? Not to mention the designing the podcast cover, titling the podcast, titling the episodes, making description boxes, all of these things. I was thinking of the end result and was extremely overwhelmed. And then I never started. And I think I started being told about podcast stuff maybe in I want to say in 2020 at the latest, say 2019, 2020. It took damn near 5 years, 5-6 years for me to do something about it. Because again, I didn't look at the task as sequential. But now reflecting on how this podcast actually came to exist, it was easy. It really was not that hard. Because what did I actually have to do? Okay, I want a podcast. Everyone says a good way to do it is to use Spotify for podcasters, or Anchor, I think at the time is what it was called. So fine, I just downloaded the app and made an account. Okay, cool. Okay, now I've made the account. What will I call the podcast? I think I made that decision in a few minutes, whatever it is. Picked some selfie I'd taken recently, made a description box that probably doesn't even align with what I talk about now. It's kind of a bit... juvenile. It is playful. I think the podcast ended up being less playful than maybe people would have expected from me when they were suggesting I should make a podcast. But whatever, it doesn't matter. Life goes on because again, things will iterate. But yeah, threw in a description box. After years of making first episodes and then never posting them anywhere, I made an episode, only introduced myself at the end because I didn't know how to do an intro. I don't have intro or outro music, and I don't know if I ever will. Like, it really wasn't hard because I just pressed record, said my thought, uploaded it, made the account. All of this would have been done within 3 hours on the first day, and then on a normal day after that, it takes the amount of time it takes to record the episode and maybe another 10 minutes after that to title it and schedule it. Do you see what I'm saying? So now we're in episode, 42. If you told me I would have 42 episodes of a podcast back then, in my mind, the vision of the effort it would require to do that consistently would have been a nightmare. But the reality of that experience has been completely easy, completely enjoyable. Every now and then there's that friction of, oh shit, I haven't posted because I'm busy with work, like I don't have a backlog, whatever. But outside of that, it's been a completely frictionless and enjoyable experience. I don't have to hold myself to the pressure of pre-planning episodes and exactly what I'm going to say because I have no idea. I let myself be surprised. I let everybody else be surprised. All this to say, to get it back to you guys, right? It's not that hard. It really is not that hard. And it's especially not that hard when you start at step 1. But if you think you can skip to step 100, good luck to you. Of course, it's impossible because any task is impossible. If you look at starting at step 100, it doesn't work that way. That's like saying you have to do the dishes and you just go into the kitchen and you're like, okay, give them a rinse and put them on I skipped to the last step of putting them on the drying rack. So effectively, you just put dirty dishes on the drying rack. Like it doesn't even logically make sense. You don't think about doing dishes like maybe the chores is not the best analogy, but I think you guys get what I'm saying, right? In any other instance in life, it's so important to go in sequential order. Your dreams carry that same responsibility, and any failure to do that will overwhelm you. And once you're overwhelmed, that's when you're kind of moving upstream because you have to fight that overwhelm. But I can tell you how to fight it right now is if you know there's this big thing that you would love to do one day, especially if it's something abstract. Like I think there are avenues we go in life that are more typical, right? Like maybe you say, I want to go to get a 4-year degree and then get a job out of college and work in corporate and X, Y, and Z. You're kind of going with what's been typically modeled to you. And if you genuinely want that, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But especially if you want to do something that you've not seen modeled that much, like if you have, especially if like you're a creative, for example, I feel like all they say about creatives is that if you're not well connected, prepare to be poor. But that's really not true. There are creatives out there paying their bills purely off of their creativity, and they're earning more even than the corporate 9-to-5 execs, right? So step 1 is, what's that big dream? And look up, how do I do this? Like get on like the free version of like an AI site and be like, how do I do this? Give me a step-by-step plan. Start at square 0. Give it some context on like who you are today, what your life currently looks like. Tell me what's one small thing I could do every day that in 30 months, that's a long time, but yes, definitely by then. But in like 30 days, 90 days, I would see some kind of an outcome moving me, like that moves the needle. Or even going back to like speaking about the memoirs and books of public figures, if there's someone's life that you admire and they have a book about themselves in their life, even if it's like someone that's no longer around or whatever it is, if you're not a big reader, obviously maybe you can look up a podcast or an interview they've done or try to find something on the internet about them, but read it. Like read it. Where did they start out in life? What resources did they have available to them? What kind of, like, is it serendipitous events transpired to take them to where they are today? Because I feel like for a lot of creatives, sometimes they don't set out with that in mind, and then things happen to them. And part of what allows those things to happen to them is making themselves visible and available for those kind of miraculous serendipitous events. So again, don't hole yourself up in your house. Expose yourself to the industries that you'd like to participate in. If you have dreams of being a stand-up comedian, go to comedy shows, see how other people are. Ask questions to the comedians. Like, how did you start writing your sets? Like, what was that process like? How did you start, getting gigs booked? Like, ask the questions from people who've done it or the internet about step one. Find out everything you can about step one. Don't overspend time, obviously, on like optimizing how to do step one, but figure out what step one is and then only do that, like step 0.00001, and only do that. And if you only have that in mind, like the tiniest, most ridiculous step that you can take right now in the next 5 minutes to put you just 5 minutes closer to achieving your goal, then that's what you should be thinking about. And when you only think about those 5 minutes, it's not that hard. And those next 5 minutes are actually your only responsibility. And your fixation on an end result of some other person in the world that had, a different experience to you, whatever, your fixation on their end result, the prime example for you, that fixation prevents you from doing the first 5 minutes. And that fixation is why it's hard. And that fixation is actually why it's impossible. But the first 5 minutes, not that hard. The next 5 minutes after that, not that hard. And so on and so on and so on. The same way, if you tell a literal baby, okay, find a way to get your diploma by the end of the day, like your high school diploma, it would be hard for that baby because they're a fucking baby. That's stupid. But if you tell that baby, like, okay, well, today we're just focusing on getting milk and sleeping well and being healthy, and mommy's going to take care of you. And then, okay, now it's time to put you in kindergarten and first grade, and we're starting to get exposed to letters, and we listen to songs on the TV. We babble with our parents. Now they're starting to, learn words, blah, 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 get exposed to languages, get exposed to math and other subjects. And then, the time passes and the focus on the next 5 minutes, the present, being present allows them to then earn that high school diploma, even sometimes faster than the years that were originally assigned to the time it takes to get a high school diploma. But you can't put the pressure on the baby at 2 years old to get a high school diploma by the end of the day. And by putting that kind of pressure on yourself, that's why you think the task in front of you is hard. It's too big of a task. So make it smaller. Okay. Love you guys so much. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Live Lumani, and thanks for thinking out loud with me. My name is Obie Amudo. And if you made it all the way to the end of today's episode, you should comment something like sports related. I'm like looking at this set of golf clubs that I have been needing really badly to actually use, and I just have not gotten around to it, and I'm like kicking myself a little bit, but that's okay. We don't beat ourselves up in this house. We will get around to it. And for you, comment a sport you like or any kind of emoji related to that. It's always nice for me to see who's making it to the ends of these. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next episode.